All right, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners, we are back with a special edition. This one is not your normal Nightmare Success podcast because Marvin Cotton, one of my all-time favorite interviews, if you guys are playing the board game, he was on a few months ago, and one heck of a story. If you remember, Marvin was sentenced to life without parole in as an innocent man and served 19 years, 7 months, 12 days. And there is a big case that's going on. It's a hearing with Lamar Johnson. And one of the cool things about this is this is I call these exoneree crusaders, because these guys, they follow around and it's a group. I mean, there's a lot of these people out there that were wrongly convicted of murder and were finally released. And if you guys are listening to the most recent podcast that came out Thursday, Daryl Burton is one of those guys. He served 24 years and finally got free. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody in. Marvin Cotton, welcome, my man.
Hey, it's an honor, always an honor.
And then I've got Ken Nixon down here in the corner. We're on a little Zoom here. Ken did 16 years and finally is sitting in front of us as a free man. And then Eric Anderson, who was 9 years. And you guys are you all from the Michigan area?
Yes.
Yes, sir. We are from Detroit, Michigan. Well,
if I'm not mistaken, and I might be wrong about this, but I think I'm somewhat right. There was an integrity unit put in play. Was it 3 or 4 years ago? I can't remember the time period, but there was
about
like
3.5 years ago, almost
3.5 years. And am I right about the number? There was like 34 men that have been released since that integrity unit was put into play.
It's up to about 36 now, but you
Wow.
Pretty much on point.
So guys, tell me, you've actually been sitting in the hearing every day with Lamar, the Lamar Johnson hearing, and man, it makes your head spin when you hear what happened. But what is interesting though is that you find out as you read through all these different cases like this, it's not unusual. It's just one of these cases that this happened this way. What's your all's take on Lamar Johnson and what is going on this week in the courtroom?
I think what we're seeing in Lamar Johnson's case is historic. The judge is no nonsense. You know, he's not tolerating any rhetoric. The repetitive behavior that you typically see in these types of hearings, the judge is definitely not tolerating it. I think just from the visual effects of what we're seeing in the courtroom, like it's not very often that you see a local prosecutor team up with an Innocence Project to free somebody like that. That's a new one, but it's also a trend that you're starting to see around the country where you have like-minded people that are really trying to see justice served, right? It's not about stacking convictions. It's about getting it right. As long as there's an innocent person in prison, there's a true killer that is free to roam the streets and victimize society. People like Kim Gardner, Tricia Bushnell Rojo, these are people that are true advocates, they're true fighters. And to see both of them in what would traditionally be an adversarial position to be on the same team now is monumental.
And I think there was a new law that was passed in 2021 in Missouri that this couldn't have even taken place before they passed this new statute where people could actually have these hearings before a judge. And that's, Missouri's a little bit behind on the curve here from a lot of other states, but at least we're getting into a situation where these cases can be heard.
Yeah, and that's interesting in and of itself, is because, in Michigan, for example, we didn't have to go through the legislature to put some law on the books to tell prosecutors that they can do something that the law doesn't prevent them from doing. And we should never put politics before innocence. We should never put the value of a dollar on innocence. So when we see that type of thing, when we've sat in prison for so many years being innocent, you know, that's like one of the most ugliest sights to us. You know, we don't get paid to be here. We don't have any personal interest, with the exception of wanting to see justice and someone not go through something that we went through. You
Right.
know, but the fact that it even had to be a battle to say, um, you know, here in Missouri with Kevin Strickland and Lamar Johnson case, they putting procedure over innocence.
Right.
At the
Wait, and you
moment,
bring up Kevin Strickland, Marvin, was he released last year?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And that was in
yes,
the Kansas City area. Yeah.
absolutely. We started coming down here for Kevin Strickland as well as Lamar Johnson last year, and we've been advocating heavily for them as well as prisoners all over the country. You know, in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, of course. We've had several hearings that we participated in and testified in on behalf of men that we believe are innocent back home in Michigan. So we're here in Missouri right now, but we're still on Zoom calls and trying to advocate and help people back in Michigan get out of prison as well. Innocent people that's
Yeah.
in prison as well as get them resources.
Yeah, because you're putting a voice to it, and that's what has to be done. I've had several friends call and talk about it because the timing of Daryl Burton's podcast this week, and then you guys being in town, it's got a conversation going within groups in St. Louis here about, wow, how does this happen? Can you guys give the high points of what you see went wrong in this case, Lamar Johnson's case?
I think different things stand out for all of us, but Ken, definitely start that off. We were just talking about this.
Yeah, we definitely were just talking about this. I think the number one issue is the misidentification. Historically, statistically, we have what can be considered a highly red flag when it comes to identification. Statistically, cross-racial identification is inherently suspect. Not only is it inherently suspect in this particular case, that same witness is now coming forward saying I screwed up. Like I'm sure I didn't see what I saw when I said I saw what I saw. So now you're put in a situation where this is a double misidentification. He's telling you he did wrong, and it's cross-racial where we know this has been ineffective throughout the years. The other thing that is you can't bypass is the government misconduct. You have documented evidence that the government compensated a witness to do what they needed him to do at that particular time. Without it on the record, it's been stated, without that witness, there's no case against Lamar Johnson. So without the incentive to testify, there is no witness for Lamar Johnson. Lamar Johnson doesn't go to prison. So, I mean, when you combine those two things, for me, there is no case here.
Marvin, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, and for me, along the same lines, because it's kind of hard to find many points, although we can find many points within the same issue, because literally the only thing that they had in order to charge and convict him was this particular witness. And the witness said that the two men that he seen had ski masks on and with the eyes cut out. So he made identification with what you see here. This area right in here is where he made his identification that sent the man to prison for the rest of his life. So, in his first two lineups, he didn't pick anybody out.
Right.
And he went, and according to his own testimony and his affidavit, but according to his own testimony, when he told the officers that he can't pick anybody out, he asked the detective, well, who do you want me to pick out? You tell me who you want to pick out and I'll say it. He actually said this. And the detective, according to this witness, said, pick 3 and 4. And he said, okay, 3 and 4. And that's exactly what he did. And that should never rob a man of 28 years of his life. That shouldn't rob a person for 28 minutes of their life. That didn't even warrant a conversation because that wasn't a real identification. You know, it was a tainted identification.
Marvin, I think one of the things that is so important is to bring light to this, because I think everybody, if they woke up in the middle of the night, one of their biggest nightmares would be to be identified in a police lineup and not be guilty. And especially if you're talking about something like murder, that carries life without parole, that has got to be ranked in the top 1, 2, 3 of somebody's nightmare of how do you deal with that after that happens? Because, going back to Daryl Burton's situation, his thing, he wasn't even in town when it happened. And the person who misidentified him, the characteristics was the person was 5'4", 5'5", he's 5'10", 5'11". There's a light-skinned person. Daryl was a dark-skinned person. So everything was wrong, but it didn't matter. It only took 30 minutes for that deliberation to happen with the jury, and he ended up to go to the 47 bloodiest acres in America, is what Time Magazine dubbed it at the time. That's the thing, what you guys are doing, bringing light to this. It's got to stay. There's got to catch momentum to it, because, and I think what you were saying, Ken. I think there is some momentum to it. I feel like that we're talking more about it now than we have. I just feel like there's some type of general conversation, like was said. I don't think you see a situation where you've got the Missouri Attorney General and the St. Louis attorney that are on opposite sides of the fence here. That doesn't really happen very often, unless you've got some momentum behind the situation that is so out of bounds. It's just so far out that you're like, man, we got to do something about this.
Absolutely. And you want to go, Eric?
Yeah, I was gonna go. With that being said, that's part of the reason why we're here. We're here to bridge the gap, to put a face to the issue. The issue is that they need progressive prosecutors, they need conviction integrity units, they need people that cares about the issue at hand. There's no reason why Lamar Johnson should still be sent to prison after 28 years. And they know that the identification was suggestive. They know that he was compensated for this testimony. It's nothing that signifies that he did this, other than the person that was paid to make a statement to say, yes, Lamar is the one that did it. Other than that, what do they have? They have an attorney general, right? It should be way more. They have an attorney general fighting the conviction. So you're just gonna fight every conviction. You're gonna fight every conviction redo. Like, let the man know. Why are you fighting justice? Part of their duty is to stand on justice, to make sure justice was served. Justice was not served. So now give this man justice that from the injustice that y'all gave him.
Yes. And I think that's one of the other things that's really tough is that once you're put into the system and once you're convicted, it is so tough to untangle that. It is almost like, just you're trying to change something that the system, as a huge weight, is you got to push it back up and try to scurry underneath it to get through. And man,
what's even more unique about Lamar's situation, though, Lamar and Kevin Strickland, what's even more unique specifically to them is we're looking at a situation where it's the government fighting the government about somebody's life. Like, when you boil this down to what's happening in this courtroom, it's the government fighting the government. Somebody's life hangs in the balance because the government can't figure out who's right and who's wrong. That man's life is hanging in the balance right now over politics, literally. I don't think it gets you can't simplify it any more than that. And then to go back to an earlier point that you made about this new law in Missouri. Yes, this is a historic law. This is something that changes the landscape, the legal landscape in Missouri. But how many people had to die before that law was passed? How many people suffered through prison stints and died in prison or on Missouri death row before there was an avenue to actually prove innocence in the state of Missouri? That law was passed in 2021. there's a lot of people that didn't make it to see 2021. A lot of innocent people that didn't make it to see 2021.
So guys,
So
what,
a lot of
well, go ahead,
I
Eric.
about to
Sorry.
say, I about to say a lot of innocent people that didn't live to see the age of 21 in the free world.
Yeah. No, it's a deep thought when you think about it that way, that, you know, there's so many people that actually, being innocent in an environment that they obviously didn't choose and shouldn't have been there, died in there. And it's that's disturbing beyond what disturbing can mean. But guys, what if somebody's listening to this, what should they be doing?
You know, we're very big on accountability. And the only people that can hold a government agency or entity accountable is the people. So that starts with awareness, that starts with educating ourselves with what should be happening, what we want to see happening, and after awareness comes engagement. People have to engage elected officials. They have to engage those that are sitting in seats that have control over the masses of our lives. Like, we have to engage. So what we do is we put a face to it. We give as much education as we can, and then we hit the ground and we get in our cars and we drive and we get on airplanes and we actually come out here and engage with people. We know that the government was set up on the premise of the people by the people, and we really believe that. Even though a lot of our experiences prove otherwise, we're going to hold to what the Constitution says, and we're going to hold people to account. And every member of society have that same obligation, responsibility, and duty. Hold our elected officials accountable. No one will want to lay in their bed every night while their family member, and they know that their family member is innocent, sitting in a cold prison cell. Only we can change that. Only the public can engage government in a way. You know, yes, they are endowed with this power that we give them. We have to hold them accountable and check it. When we see they're not doing something right, they have to be held accountable, and only we can do it. That has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat, progressive or conservative. It has nothing to do with that, because innocents don't have a political party. I got that from my brother Ken Nixon. Innocents don't have a political party. It does not. And people have to stop siding with politics when it comes to human life, because it could easily be you. Anytime the government get away with doing the wrong thing, that just means it just made it easier for them to do it to you.
Yeah. Good point. Really good point.
For those that are not engaged in the political aspect of it, there's other ways that you can get involved as well. There's criminal justice reform organizations all across this country. There's national ones, there's local ones, there's statewide ones. There's always something to do. There's always something, whether it's volunteering on the weekends or donating money or lending yourself to being able to lend a helping hand, making copies. There's innocence organizations all over the country. Innocence projects take volunteers. They take interns for college students. There's all sorts of ways. We're nonprofit. You know, the work that we're doing is self-funded, right? There's all sorts of startups that are showing up. Criminal justice reform, to be honest, is sexy right now. Everybody's talking about criminal justice reform. I guarantee you there's a space for anybody, and it doesn't make a difference, you know, what you're gifted at, whether it's, you know, web design or creative stuff. There is a space for you in this industry. We need help. Lawyers, progressives, conservatives have a voice in this movement, whether you believe it or not. Conservatives have a voice, right? If everything was all one-sided, we would never get anywhere. We need to hear from people. We need to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. That's how we make change in this country, by respecting each other's opinions and coming to a compromise. There's a space for everyone here. But when it comes to issues of innocence, I don't think there's a compromise when it comes to that. Nobody should die in prison for a crime that they didn't commit. That it's just, it's hurtful to think about that this is what our country is still talking about going into 2023, that there's innocent people locked in cages that can do nothing about it themselves. And yeah, we know Lamar Johnson's name, we know Kevin Strickland's names, but what about all the names we don't hear? What about all the names that don't bubble to the top, right? I mean, it takes advocates, it takes people to get off their couches and do something about it in order to change the system. So I would say for everybody that's listening, if you're sitting on your couch and you want to get involved, find a way. There's always a way.
I was going to say, follow up on that too, Ken, is that the one scary thing that I see in our society right now is that we are narrow casting. You know, that people listen to what they want to listen to, go to the place that only hears what they want to hear. And I think for us to break through this is that we've got to get away. Communication has to be hearing each other so that the movement can be what it needs to be. You know, I hope that the pendulum starts swinging back to normality with people just being able to talk, you know, just being able to discuss important issues without one being evil. You know, we're talking about real things that need to change. And the only way to do that is to have conversations about it. And it's got to be that way, or it doesn't swing the pendulum the right way.
I
Do you
agree.
think they
I
care?
definitely agree. Two-way communication, effective listening, compromise. These are all things that we need, especially in the wrongful conviction community. Being able to listen to each other and really hear what the other side is saying is we have to compromise. We have to.
Do you think there's issues too of, and do you guys think it's changing where, you know, a narrative takes one path and they go down that path and they don't investigate what they should be investigating, and more for the expediency of, you know, you get a conviction, you get a promotion, you get a conviction, you get movement. And it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of, what should I say? The freedom to be able to do that and tell somebody, you know, hey, it's 3 and 4. But as far as their job security and what happens if that conviction happens, it's usually in a positive thing that happens, you know, as another notch, another conviction. You know, the further we get away from that, the further the justice is just for justice instead of what it does for you in the system. You know, because I feel like that goes all the way up. I mean, I think the Justice Department all the way through, from the local level all the way to the federal level, there's a piece there that needs to be balanced back too, that there's some harm. If you cause harm, that shouldn't be something that goes unreprimanded and unnoticed.
There's most certainly no accountability on behalf of the government and when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to justice, period. There's absolutely no accountability. They are protected by law and their job security. And I think you are correct. It perpetuates the problem. Historically, it perpetuates the problem. When there's no accountability, it leaves them with the freedom to be as destructive and harmful as they wish. And in some situations, it even incentivizes them to do so. When you boil down this bigger problem of no accountability, it's about case numbers, right? Solving crime. The police, as we know, are pressurized sometimes. They're incentivized to solve cases. Statistics show that historically, you know, closing cases and case rates have been historically low. So the pressure from the top to bring those numbers up causes people sometimes to do things that are unjust.
And I think that's something that there's a lot of good police officers out there putting their life on the line. You know, I know that, but for those few that take away people's freedom and put innocent people away, those are the, you know, there has to be accountability for that. And without that, I think the system doesn't quite close the gap, because what it does is it puts unjustly a black mark on the good men and good women doing good things out there. trying to protect the communities, trying to do the good things, because they do. But for the people that don't, without them having accountability, it gives a black mark and unfairly to the whole. And I think the more that we could close that gap so that those people are held accountable, but the rest are recognized for the great job they do, would also be a great turn in the wheel.
I want to highlight
Well,
one point when it comes to that, because I know Marv and Eric want to jump in on this one, but let me highlight one extremely very important point. When it comes to the police, right, we hear this narrative about, you know, it's one bad apple, it's two bad apples, that was just a bad cop. What we never hear is the good cops getting rid of the bad cops. If you know
Right.
that person is bad, why is it on society? Why is it society's responsibility to discover this when you knew it was happening for 20 years? If you
Yep.
don't want that black mark on your name, then you do something about it. Why is it
Right,
left to
Otto.
society to come back later on and discover that 30 years later, this guy had a documented history of being a bad cop? You knew it all
Yep.
along and you did nothing to address it. So in my opinion, it makes the good cops look just as bad as the bad cop because you knew it was happening and you did nothing to address it. So, I mean,
Complicit. Yeah.
exactly, it's complicit behavior. And then everybody
Yeah.
cries out about, well, it was just one bad person. Well, you knew it was happening. So why didn't you do anything
Right.
about it? If you didn't want that to blow back on your name, you should have addressed it years before.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, he pretty much stole my point. Well, you know, we've kind of we've suffered under some of the same things. So I know it's kind of hard for a lot of people in society not to really understand that, and we understand that. Um, you know, our experience, we had in our cases, all of our cases, as well as a lot of other exonerees that we represent and cases that we follow. All of those cases had corrupt, bad detectives, not bad detective work. No,
Right.
intentional
Right.
decisions, intentional things being withheld, intentional things being done, lies being injected, not starting with witnesses, but starting with detectives. And it's not one detective in Detroit. You know, there's been many detectives in Detroit that have led to many wrongful convictions. Some of those detectives, you know, dozens of cases out of Chicago, Illinois, and New York, where just a couple of detectives had hundreds of wrongful convictions thrown out. But it's hard for bad cops to exist when they're existing amongst a lot of good cops.
Agreed.
We
Agreed.
need human beings to really step up. I think going into
Yeah.
2023 and beyond, we really need good human beings on every level, whether they're a police officer or not. We work with law enforcement, doing speaking engagements at high schools. So
Mhm.
we're not anti-cop or anything like that. We come to the table and give our suggestions and put our 2 cents in every opportunity we get, not only to make a better department because you know they public servants, they work for us, but also to help make a better department for everybody. So we come to the table if they have a nonprofit or organization that they're working with. We come to the table. So we're not anti-cop. However, we don't accept injustice on no level from anybody. You know, any fear that any of us had got left a long time ago when it burnt away into this, you know, the experiences that we undergone. So we use our fearlessness, and we really give our fearlessness like a charity to society, and we do and say what people won't do and say for the greater good of everybody.
Yeah. I love that. Kind of going around the horn here, wrapping up. Anything else you guys want to get out there while we're talking this up?
You know, I would just like to say, I would just like to say, not to that point, not anything to that point. I would like to say, man, I love St. Louis. I love
All right,
Missouri.
man.
I think we all can agree to, um, when we first came down here, it was a challenge. You know, we all
Yeah.
from Detroit, but we had faith and we had confidence in ourselves and our story and our desire to want to change the world, to keep coming around, to invest our time and our resources into bettering Missouri. You know, I know it's one step at a time. We still got a whole lot of work to do, but I can vouch for all of us that we invested to trying to change Missouri one step at a time.
That's a big deal. And you know, the fact that you guys are doing what you're doing is so cool because you are giving a face to the problem. And that's probably more important than anything. You're giving a face, giving a voice to something that people need to know. They might not want to know. I mean, I think it scares people to think that these things can happen. Because if it means if it can happen to you, it can happen to them. And I think sometimes that's hard for people to face. Scares them.
True.
And it makes it easy for people to ignore. That's what makes it easy for people to ignore. What you just said right there.
Marvin, let's talk about your book. I've been looking. Better Not Broken
Oh,
is
wow.
running wild on Amazon in the #1 category. Way to go, man!
Yeah. You know, I talk about a lot of what we've been through, but you know, more about my personal experience, just the pain of, and you know about it as well, just the pain of being incarcerated, being there, you know, wrongfully convicted, the mental anguish, the emotional damage, the loss of relationships. I lost maybe 95% of my relationships in my first year of being incarcerated. So here I go, you know, in there for something I didn't do, and I'm losing everything. So my book is a way of giving back and bringing, you know, more and more awareness to these issues that we're talking about now here today.
I'll tell you this, is that one of the things about this podcast is what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt? How do you survive? And I think the other part of it is that after you adapt, survive, how do you use your experience? You guys are using your experience for the good. You're making a difference. And man, if you guys just keep doing that, we need to put an umbrella over the United States to make this stuff happen.
So I want
We're
to
gonna
thank
need your
you for
help.
what you do, you know, with your podcast and showing how a directly impacted person can come out of that accident and start a process of repairing themselves and become a success. And in a lot of cases, like almost everybody that I've seen, if not every single episode I've seen that you've done, you've highlighted these amazing success stories that don't even compare to people that haven't never even experienced that type of impact. So I love what you're doing. You're giving a voice. You're putting the right face on what change looks like and giving it a voice. And I appreciate you sharing this your platform with exonerees.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Marvin. Well, guys, thanks for coming to St. Louis. Eric, thanks for the shout out for St. Louis. St. Louis needs that. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you for making it happen.
All right, Marvin, Ken, Eric, thanks for coming to St. Louis. Thanks for giving your voice. Thanks for supporting Lamar Johnson. And hopefully we can get this guy home before Christmas.
Absolutely.
Yes,
And we'll
that's the
see you
goal.
soon. We'll see you
All right,
soon.
guys.
Yes,
Be
sir.
good.
Thank you.
All right, see you.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. What time do you guys leave tomorrow?
6:30 in the morning, our flights leave.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
Early Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But have you guys eaten any good places or anything since you've been here? You should
Yeah,
give
we
me
went
a
to-
call, Marvin. I could have helped you out on some places.
Yeah. Hey, one thing we don't have a problem with is finding where the good food
Finding
at.
food.
We went to Sauce
Guys,
on the
let's stay in
Side.
touch.
Yeah.
And,
If you
yeah, go ahead, Marvin.
No, I was gonna say if you've seen all of our pictures on day one and then see the way we look now, you'd be able to compare the faces and say, yeah, they eating. They most certainly eating.
Yeah, me too, man. Put on a quick 25 afterwards. And Ken and Eric, man, I'd love to have you guys on the podcast sharing your own stories. So Marvin, if you can share
I'll
your
send you both of
contact
they.
information,
Yep, I'll send both of their informations to you.
that'd be cool. I'd
All right,
I'd
yeah,
love
that
to do
sounds
that.
good. That sounds good.
All right, guys, be good. Enjoy your Friday night and have a Merry Christmas. It's right around the corner, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Also, what was I would say? Send me the video because you know how you do. You know how you do your videos
Yeah.
before you. Oh, listen, y'all. He's the best when it comes to promoting his shows. And with your permission, of course, I know after you do it, we're gonna definitely want to use that, you know, to kind of put out there too, because I love the way you introduce your guests.
Absolutely. And and you guys will be able to get this on YouTube also.
Okay.
So that if people, that some people like to see it, some people like to listen to it, some people like to do both, but it's all good, man. Appreciate it, guys.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you
Keep
later.
doing the good
Talk
stuff.
to you later.
All right, man.
All right.